Having thus spoken, he set forth to me so openly and so clearly who that prophet was, and how he might be found, that I seemed to have before my eyes, and to handle with my hand, the proofs which he produced concerning the prophetic truth. And I was struck with intense astonishment how no one sees, though placed before his eyes, those things which all are seeking for. Whence by his command, reducing into order what he had spoken to me, I compiled a book concerning the true prophet, and sent it to you from Caesarea by his command. For he said that he had received a command from you to send you every year an account of his sayings and doings. Meantime, at the beginning of his discourse, which he delivered to me the first day, when he had instructed me very fully concerning the true prophet, and very many things besides, he added also this. See, said he, for the future, and be present at the discussions which whenever any necessity arises, I shall hold with those who contradict, against whom, when I dispute, even if I shall seem to be worsted, I shall not be afraid of your being led to doubt of those things which I have stated to you, because even if I shall seem to be beaten, yet those things shall not therefore seem to be uncertain which the true prophet has delivered to us. Yet I hope that we shall not be overcome in disputations either, if only our hearers are reasonable, and friends of truth, who can discern the force and bearing of words, and recognize what discourse comes from the sophistical art, not containing truth, but an image of truth, and what that is, which uttered simply and without craft, depends for all its power not on show and ornament, but on truth and reason. To this I answered, I give thanks to Jehovah Almighty, because I have been instructed as I wished and desired. At all events, you may depend upon me so far, that I can never come to doubt of those things which I have learned of you, so that even if you yourself should at any time wish to transfer my faith from the true prophet, you should not be able, because I have drunk in with all my heart what you have spoken, and that you may not think that I am promising you a great thing when I say that I cannot be moved away from this faith. It is with me a certainty that whoever has received this account of the true prophet can never afterwards so much as doubt of its truth. And therefore, I am confident with respect to this heaven-taught doctrine, in which all the art of malice is overborne. For in opposition to this prophecy neither any art can stand, nor the subtleties of sophisms and syllogism, but everyone who hears of the true prophet must of necessity long immediately for the truth itself, nor will he afterwards, under pretext of seeking the truth, endure diverse errors. Wherefore, O my Lord Peter, be not further anxious about me, as if I were one who does not know what he has received, and how great a gift has been conferred on him. Be assured that you have conferred a favor on one who knows and understands its value, nor can I be easily deceived on that account, because I seem to have gotten quickly what I long desired. For it may be that one who desires gets quickly, while another does not even slowly attain the things which he desires. Then Peter, when he heard me speak thus, said, I give thanks to my Jehovah, both for your salvation and for my own peace. For I am greatly delighted to see that you have understood what is the greatness of the prophetic virtue, and because, as you say, not even I myself, if I should wish it, which Jehovah forbid, should be able to turn you away to another faith. Now henceforth begin to be with us, and tomorrow be present at our discussions, for I am to have a contest with Simon the magician. When he had thus spoken, he retired to take food along with his friends. But he ordered me to eat by myself, and after the meal, when he had sung praise to Jehovah and given thanks, he rendered to me an account of this proceeding, and added, May the Lord grant to you to be made like to us in all things, that receiving baptism, you may be able to meet with us at the same table. Having thus spoken, he ordered me to go to rest, for by this time both fatigue and the time of the day called to sleep. Early next morning Zacchaeus came into us, and after salutation said to Peter, "Simon puts off the discussion till the 11th day of the present month, which is 7 days hence, for he says that then he will have more leisure for the contest. But to me, it seems that his putting off is also advantageous to us, so that more may come together, who may be either hearers or judges of our disputation. However, if it seem proper to you, let us occupy the interval in discussing among ourselves the things which we suppose may come into the controversy, so that each of us, knowing what things are to be proposed and what answers are to be given, may consider with himself if they are all right, or if an adversary shall be able to find anything to object, or to set aside the things which we bring against him. But if the things which are to be spoken by us are manifestly impregnable on every side, we shall have confidence in entering upon the examination. And indeed, this is my opinion, that first of all it ought to be inquired what is the origin of all things, or what is the immediate thing which may be called the cause of all things which are. Then, with respect to all things that exist, whether they have been made, and by whom, through whom, and for whom, whether they have received their subsistence from one or from two or from many, and whether they have been taken and fashioned from none previously subsisting, or from some. Then, whether there is any virtue in the highest things or in the lower, whether there is anything which is better than all, or anything that is inferior to all, whether there are any motions or none, whether those things which are seen were always and shall be always, whether they have come into existence without a creator and shall pass away without a destroyer. If I say, the discussion begin with these things, I think that the things which shall be inquired into, being discussed with diligent examination, will be easily ascertained. And when these are ascertained, the knowledge of those that follow will be easily found. I have stated my opinion. Be pleased to intimate what you think of the matter. To this Peter answered, Tell Simon in the meantime to do as he pleases, and to rest assured that, divine providence granting, he shall always find us ready. Then Zacchaeus went out to intimate to Simon what he had been told. But Peter, looking at us, and perceiving that I was saddened by the putting off of the contest, said, He who believes that the world is administered by the providence of the Most High Jehovah, ought not, O Clement my friend, to take it amiss in whatever way particular things happen, being assured that the righteousness of Jehovah guides to a favorable and fitting issue even those things which seem superfluous or contrary in any business, and especially towards those who worship him more intimately. And therefore, he who is assured of these things, as I have said, if anything occur contrary to his expectation, he knows how to drive away grief from his mind on that account, holding it unquestionable in his better judgment, that by the government of the good Jehovah, even what seems contrary may be turned to good. Wherefore, O Clement, even now let not this delay of the magician Simon sadden you, for I believe that it has been done by the providence of Jehovah, for your advantage, that I may be able in this interval of 7 days to expound to you the method of our faith without any distraction, and the order continuously, according to the tradition of the true prophet, who alone knows the past as it was, the present as it is, and the future as it shall be, which things were indeed plainly spoken by him, but are not plainly written. So much so, that when they are read, they cannot be understood without an expounder, on account of the sin which has grown up with men, as I said before. Therefore I shall explain all things to you, that in those things which are written you may clearly perceive what is the mind of the lawgiver. When he had said this, he began to expound to me point by point of those chapters of the law which seemed to be in question, from the beginning of the creation, even to that point of time at which I came to him at Caesarea, telling me that the delay of Simon had contributed to my learning all things in order. At other times, said he, we shall discourse more fully on individual points of which we have now spoken shortly, according as the occasion of our conversation shall bring them before us. So that, according to my promise, you may gain a full and perfect knowledge of all. Since then, by this delay we have today on our hands, I wish to repeat to you again what has been spoken, that it may be the better recalled to your memory. Then he began in this way to refresh my recollection of what he had said. Do you remember, O friend Clement, the account I gave you of the eternal age that knows no end? Then said I, Never, O Peter, shall I retain anything, if I can lose or forget that. Then Peter, having heard my answer with pleasure, said, I congratulate you because you have answered thus, not because you speak of these things easily, but because you profess that you remember them. For the most sublime truths are best honored by means of silence. Yet, for the credit of those things which you remember concerning things not to be spoken, tell me what you retain of those things which we spoke of in the second place, which can easily be spoken out, that, perceiving your tenacity of memory, I may the more readily point out to you, and freely open, the things of which I wish to speak. Then I, when I perceived that he rejoiced in the good memory of his hearers, said, Not only am I mindful of your definition, but also of that preface which was prefixed to the definition. And of almost all things that you have expounded, I retain the sense complete, though not all the words, because the things that you have spoken have been made, as it were, native to my soul and inborn. For you have held out a most sweet cup to me in my excessive thirst, and that you may not suppose that I am occupying you with words, being unmindful of things, I shall now call to mind the things which were spoken, in which the order of your discussion greatly helps me. For the way in which the things that you said followed by consequence upon one another, and were arranged in a balanced manner, makes them easily recalled to memory by the lines of their order. For the order of sayings is useful for remembering them, for when you begin to follow them point by point in succession, when anything is wanting, immediately the sense seeks for it, and when it has found it, retains it, or at all events, if it cannot discover it, there will be no reluctance to ask it of the master. But not to delay in granting what you demand of me, I shall shortly rehearse what you delivered to me concerning the definition of truth. There always was, there is now, and there ever shall be, that by which the first will begotten from eternity consists, and from the first will proceeds a second will. After these came the world, and from the world came time, from this the multitude of men, from the multitude the election of the beloved, from whose oneness of mind the peaceful kingdom of Jehovah is constructed. But the rest, which ought to follow these, you promised to tell me at another time. After this, when you had explained about the creation of the world, you intimated the decree of Jehovah, which he of his own good pleasure announced in the presence of all the first angels, and which he ordained as an eternal law to all, and how he established two kingdoms, I mean that of the present time and that of the future, and appointed times to each, and decreed that a day of judgment should be expected, which he determined, in which a severance is to be made of things and of souls, so that the wicked indeed shall be consigned to eternal fire for their sins. But those who have lived according to the will of Jehovah the Creator, having received a blessing for their good works, effulgent with brightest light, introduced into an eternal abode, and abiding in incorruption, shall receive eternal gifts of ineffable blessings. While I was going on thus, Peter, enraptured with joy and anxious for me as if I had been his son, lest perhaps I should fail in recollection of the rest, and be put to shame on account of those who were present, said, It is enough, O Clement, for you have stated these things more clearly than I myself explained them. Then said I, Liberal learning has conferred upon me the power of orderly narration, and of stating those things clearly for which there is occasion. And if we use learning in asserting the errors of antiquity, we ruin ourselves by gracefulness and smoothness of speech. But if we apply learning and grace of speech to the assertion of the truth, I think that not a little advantage is thereby gained. Be that as it may, my Lord Peter, you can but imagine with what thankfulness I am transported for all the rest of your instruction indeed. but especially for the statement of that doctrine which you gave. There is one God whose work the world is, and who, because he is in all respects righteous, shall render to everyone according to his deeds. And after that you added, for the assertion of this dogma countless thousands of words will be brought forward, but in those to whom is granted knowledge of the true prophet, all this forest of words is cut down. And on this account, since you have delivered to me a discourse concerning the true prophet, you have strengthened me with all confidence of your assertions. And then, having perceived that the sum of all religion and piety consists in this, I immediately replied, You have proceeded most excellently, O Peter. Wherefore, in future, expound unhesitatingly, as to one who already knows what are the foundations of faith and piety, the traditions of the true prophet, who alone, as has been clearly proved, is to be believed. But that exposition which requires assertions and arguments, reserve for the unbelievers, to whom you have not yet judged it proper to commit the indubitable faith of prophetic grace. When I had said this, I added, You promised that you would give at the proper time two things. First, this exposition, at once simple and entirely free from error, and then an exposition of each individual point as it may be evolved in the course of the various questions which shall be raised. And after this, you expounded the sequence of things in order from the beginning of the world, even to the present time. And if you please, I can repeat the whole from memory. To this Peter answered, I am exceedingly delighted, O Clement, that I commit my words to so safe a heart. For to be mindful of the things that are spoken is an indication of having in readiness the faith of works. But he from whom the wicked demon steals away the words of salvation and snatches them away from his memory cannot be saved, even though he wish it, for he loses the way by which life is reached. Wherefore, let us the rather repeat what has been spoken, and confirm it in your heart, that is, in what manner or by whom the world was made, that we may proceed to the friendship of the Creator. But his friendship is secured by living well and by obeying his will, which will is the law of all that live. We shall therefore unfold these things briefly to you, in order that they may be the more surely remembered. In the beginning, when Jehovah had made the heaven and the earth, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, as one house, the shadow which was cast by the mundane bodies involved in darkness those things which were enclosed in it. But, when the will of Jehovah had introduced light, that darkness which had been caused by the shadows of bodies was straightway dispelled. Then at length light is appointed for the day, and darkness for the night. And now the water which was within the world, in the middle space of that first heaven and earth, congealed as if with frost, and solid as crystal, is distended, and the middle spaces of the heaven and earth are separated as by a firmament of this sort. And that firmament the Creator called heaven, so called by the name of that previously made. So, he divided into two portions that fabric of the universe, although it was but one house. The reason of the division was this, that the upper portion might afford a dwelling place to angels, and the lower to men. After this, the place of the sea and the chaos which had been made received that portion of the water which remained below, by order of the eternal will. And these, flowing down to the sunken hollow places, the dry land appeared, and the gatherings of the waters were made seas. And after this, the earth which had appeared produced various species of herbs and shrubs. It gave forth fountains also, and rivers, not only in the plains but on the mountains. So all things were prepared, that men who were to dwell in it might have it in their power to use all these things according to their will, that is, either for good or evil. After this, he adorns that visible heaven with stars. He places in it also the sun and the moon, that the day might enjoy the light of the one, the night that of the other, and that at the same time they might be for an indication of things past, present, and future, for they were made for signs of seasons and of days, which, although they are seen indeed by all, are understood only by the learned and intelligent. And when, after this, he had ordered living creatures to be produced from the earth and the waters. He made paradise, which also he named a place of delights. But after all these things, he made man, on whose account he had prepared all things, whose internal species is older, and for whose sake all things that are were made, given up to his service, and assigned to the uses of his habitation. All things therefore being completed which are in heaven, and in earth, and in the waters, and the human race also having multiplied in the 8th generation, righteous men, who had lived the life of angels, being allured by the beauty of women, fell into promiscuous and illicit connections with these. And thenceforth, acting in all things without discretion and disorderly, they changed the state of human affairs and the divinely prescribed order of life, so that either by persuasion or force they compelled all men to sin against Jehovah their Creator. In the 9th generation are born the giants, so called from of old, not dragon-footed, as the fables of the Greeks relate, but men of immense bodies, whose bones of enormous size are still shown in some places for confirmation. But against these, the righteous providence of Jehovah brought a flood upon the world, that the earth might be purified from their pollution, and every place might be turned into a sea by the destruction of the wicked. Yet there was then found one righteous man, by name Noah, who, being delivered in an ark with his 3 sons and their wives, became the colonizer of the world after the subsiding of the waters, with those animals and seeds which he had shut up with him. In the 12th generation, when Jehovah had blessed men and they had begun to multiply, Genesis chapter 9 verse 1, they received a commandment that they should not taste blood, for on account of this also the deluge had been sent. In the 13th generation, when the second of Noah's 3 sons had done an injury to his father and had been cursed by him, he brought the condition of slavery upon his posterity. His elder brother, meantime, obtained the lot of a dwelling place in the middle region of the world, in which is the country of Judea. The younger obtained the eastern quarter, and he the western. In the 14th generation, one of the cursed progeny first erected an altar to demons for the purpose of magical arts, and offered there bloody sacrifices. In the 15th generation, for the first time, men set up an idol and worshipped it. Until that time, the Hebrew language, which had been given by Jehovah to men, bore sole sway. In the 16th generation, the sons of men migrated from the east, and, coming to the lands that had been assigned to their fathers, each one marked the place of his own allotment by his own name. In the 17th generation, Nimrod the first reigned in Babylonia and built a city, and thence migrated to the Persians, and taught them to worship fire. In the 18th generation, walled cities were built, armies were organized and armed, judges and laws were sanctioned, temples were built, and the princes of nations were adored as gods. In the 19th generation, the descendants of him who had been cursed after the flood, going beyond their proper bounds, which they had obtained by lot in the western regions, drove into the eastern lands those who had obtained the middle portion of the world, and pursued them as far as Persia, while themselves violently took possession of the country from which they expelled them. In the 20th generation, a son for the first time died before his father, Genesis chapter 11 verse 28, on account of an incestuous crime. In the 21st generation, there was a certain wise man, of the race of those who were expelled, of the family of Noah's eldest son, by name Abraham, from whom our Hebrew nation is derived. When the whole world was again overspread with errors, and when for the hideousness of its crimes destruction was ready for it, this time not by water, but fire, and when already the scourge was hanging over the whole earth, beginning with Sodom, this man, by reason of his friendship with Jehovah, who was well pleased with him, obtained from Jehovah that the whole world should not equally perish. From the first, this same man, being an astrologer, was able, from the account and order of the stars, to recognize the Creator, while all others were in error, and understood that all things are regulated by his providence. Whence also an angel, standing by him in a vision, instructed him more fully concerning those things which he was beginning to perceive. He showed him also what belonged to his race and posterity, and promised him that those districts should be restored rather than given to them. Therefore Abraham, when he was desirous to learn the causes of things, and was intently pondering upon what had been told him, the true prophet appeared to him, who alone knows the hearts and purpose of men, and disclosed to him all things which he desired. He taught him the knowledge of the divinity, intimated the origin of the world, and likewise its end, showed him the immortality of the soul, and the manner of life which was pleasing to Jehovah, declared also the resurrection of the dead, the future judgment, the reward of the good, the punishment of the evil, all to be regulated by righteous judgment. And having given him all this information plainly and sufficiently, he departed again to the invisible abodes. But while Abraham was still in ignorance, as we said to you before, 2 sons were born to him, of whom the one was called Ismael, and the other Heliesdros. From the one are descended the barbarous nations, from the other the people of the Persians, some of whom have adopted the manner of living and the institutions of their neighbors, the Brachmans, others settled in Arabia, of whose posterity some also have spread into Egypt. From them some of the Indians and of the Egyptians have learned to be circumcised, and to be of purer observance than others, although in process of time most of them have turned to impiety, what was the proof and sign of purity. Nevertheless, as he had got these 2 sons during the time while he still lived in ignorance of things, having received the knowledge of Jehovah, he asked of the righteous one that he might merit to have offspring by Sarah, who was his lawful wife, though she was barren. She obtained a son, whom he named Isaac, from whom came Jacob, and from him the 12 patriarchs, and from these 1272. These, when famine befell, came into Egypt with all their family, and in the course of 400 years, being multiplied by the blessing and promise of Jehovah, they were afflicted by the Egyptians. And when they were afflicted, the true prophet appeared to Moses, Exodus the 3rd, and struck the Egyptians with 10 plagues, when they refused to let the Hebrew people depart from them and return to their native land. And he brought the people of Jehovah out of Egypt. But those of the Egyptians who survived the plagues, being infected with the animosity of their king, pursued after the Hebrews. And when they had overtaken them at the seashore, and thought to destroy and exterminate them all, Moses, pouring out prayer to Jehovah, divided the sea into 2 parts, so that the water was held on the right hand and on the left as if it had been frozen, and the people of Jehovah passed as over a dry road. But the Egyptians who were pursuing them, rashly entering, were drowned. For when the last of the Hebrews came out, the last of the Egyptians went down into the sea, and straightway the waters of the sea, which by his command were held bound as with frost, were loosed by his command who had bound them, and recovering their natural freedom, inflicted punishment on the wicked nation. After this, Moses, by the command of Jehovah, whose providence is over all, led out the people of the Hebrews into the wilderness, and leaving the shortest road which leads from Egypt to Judea, he led the people through long windings of the wilderness, that, by the discipline of 40 years, the novelty of a changed manner of life might root out the evils which had clung to them by a long-continued familiarity with the customs of the Egyptians. Meantime they came to Mount Sinai, and thence the law was given to them with voices and sights from heaven, written in 10 precepts, of which the first and greatest was that they should worship Jehovah himself alone, and not make to themselves any appearance or form to worship. But when Moses had gone up to the mount and was staying there 40 days, the people, although they had seen Egypt struck with the 10 plagues, and the sea parted and passed over by them on foot, manna also given to them from heaven for bread, and drink supplied to them out of the rock that followed 1 Corinthians 10, for them, which kind of food was turned into whatever taste anyone desired. and although being placed under the torrid region of heaven, they were shaded by a cloud in the daytime, that they might not be scorched by the heat, and by night were enlightened by a pillar of fire, lest the horror of darkness should be added to the wasteness of the wilderness. Those very people, I say, when Moses stayed in the mount, made and worshipped a golden calf's head after the fashion of Apis, whom they had seen worshipped in Egypt, and after so many and so great marvels which they had seen, were unable to cleanse and wash out from themselves the defilements of old habit. On this account, leaving the short road which leads from Egypt to Judea, Moses conducted them by an immense circuit of the desert, if haply he might be able, as we mentioned before, to shake off the evils of old habit by the change of a new education. When meantime Moses, that faithful and wise steward, perceived that the vice of sacrificing to idols had been deeply ingrained into the people from their association with the Egyptians, and that the root of this evil could not be extracted from them, he allowed them indeed to sacrifice, but permitted it to be done only to Jehovah, that by any means he might cut off one half of the deeply ingrained evil, leaving the other half to be corrected by another, and at a future time, by him, namely concerning whom he said himself, "A prophet shall the Lord your Jehovah raise unto you, whom you shall hear even as myself, according to all things which he shall say to you. Whosoever shall not hear that prophet, his soul shall be cut off from his people." In addition to these things, he also appointed a place in which alone it should be lawful to them to sacrifice to Jehovah. And all this was arranged with this view, that when the fitting time should come, and they should learn by means of the prophet that Jehovah desires mercy and not sacrifice, they might see him who should teach them that the place chosen of Jehovah, in which it was suitable that victims should be offered to Jehovah, is his wisdom. And that on the other hand, they might hear that this place, which seemed chosen for a time, often harassed as it had been by hostile invasions and plunderings, was at last to be wholly destroyed. And in order to impress this upon them, even before the coming of the true prophet, who was to reject at once the sacrifices and the place, it was often plundered by enemies and burnt with fire, and the people carried into captivity among foreign nations, and then brought back when they betook themselves to the mercy of Jehovah, that by these things they might be taught that a people who offer sacrifices are driven away and delivered up into the hands of the enemy, but they who do mercy and righteousness are without sacrifices freed from captivity and restored to their native land. But it fell out that very few understood this, for the greater number, though they could perceive and observe these things, yet were held by the irrational opinion of the vulgar, for right opinion with liberty is the prerogative of a few. 38 Moses then, having arranged these things, and having set over the people one asses to bring them to the land of their fathers, himself by the command of the living Jehovah, went up to a certain mountain, and there died. Yet such was the manner of his death, that till this day no one has found his burial place. When therefore the people reached their father's land, by the providence of Jehovah, at their first onset the inhabitants of wicked races are routed, and they enter upon their paternal inheritance, which was distributed among them by lot. For some time thereafter they were ruled not by kings, but judges, and remained in a somewhat peaceful condition. But when they sought for themselves tyrants rather than kings, then also with regal ambition they erected a temple in the place which had been appointed to them for prayer, and thus, through a succession of wicked kings, the people fell away to greater and still greater impiety. But when the time began to draw near, that what was wanting in the Mosaic institutions should be supplied, as we have said, and that the prophet should appear, of whom he had foretold that he should warn them by the mercy of Jehovah to cease from sacrificing, lest haply they might suppose that on the cessation of sacrifice there was no remission of sins for them, he instituted baptism by water among them, in which they might be absolved from all their sins on the invocation of his name, and for the future, following a perfect life, might abide in immortality, being purified not by the blood of beasts, but by the purification of the wisdom of Jehovah. Subsequently, also an evident proof of this great mystery is supplied in the fact that everyone who, believing in this prophet who had been foretold by Moses, is baptized in his name shall be kept unhurt from the destruction of war, which impends over the unbelieving nation and the place itself. But that those who do not believe shall be made exiles from their place and kingdom, that even against their will they may understand and obey the will of Jehovah. These things therefore having been forearranged, he who was expected comes, bringing signs and miracles as his credentials by which he should be made manifest. But not even so did the people believe, though they had been trained during so many ages to the belief of these things. And not only did they not believe, but they added blasphemy to unbelief, saying that he was a gluttonous man and a belly slave, and that he was actuated by a demon, even he who had come for their salvation. To such an extent does wickedness prevail by the agency of evil ones, so that, but for the wisdom of Jehovah assisting those who love the truth, almost all would have been involved in impious delusion. Therefore he chose us 12, Matthew the first who believed in him, whom he named apostles, and afterwards other 72 most approved disciples. Luke 6 that, at least in this way recognizing the pattern of Moses, Numbers 11:16, the multitude might believe that this is he of whom Moses foretold, the prophet that was to come, Deuteronomy 18:15. But someone perhaps may say that it is possible for anyone to imitate a number. But what shall we say of the signs and miracles which he wrought? For Moses had wrought miracles and cures in Egypt. He also of whom he foretold that he should rise up a prophet like himself, though he cured every sickness and infirmity among the people, wrought innumerable miracles, and preached eternal life, was hurried by wicked men to the cross, which deed was, however, by his power turned to good. In short, while he was suffering, all the world suffered with him. For the sun was darkened, the mountains were torn asunder, the graves were opened, the veil of the temple was rent, as in lamentation for the destruction impending over the place. And yet, though all the world was moved, they themselves are not even now moved to the consideration of these so great things. But inasmuch as it was necessary that the Gentiles should be called into the room of those who remained unbelieving, so that the number might be filled up which had been shown to Abraham, the preaching of the blessed kingdom of Jehovah is sent into all the world. On this account, worldly spirits are disturbed, who always oppose those who are in quest of liberty, and who make use of the engines of error to destroy Jehovah's building. While those who press on to the glory of safety and liberty, being rendered braver by their resistance to these spirits, and by the toil of great struggles against them, attain the crown of safety, not without the palm of victory. Meantime, when he had suffered, and darkness had overwhelmed the world from the 6th even to the 9th hour, Matthew 27:45. As soon as the sun shone out again, and things were returned to their usual course, even wicked men returned to themselves and their former practices, their fear having abated. For some of them, watching the place with all care, when they could not prevent his rising again, said that he was a magician. Others pretended that he was stolen away. Matthew 28:13. Nevertheless, the truth everywhere prevailed. For in proof that these things were done by divine power, we who had been very few became in the course of a few days, by the help of Jehovah, far more than they. So that the priests at one time were afraid, lest haply, by the providence of Jehovah, to their confusion, the whole of the people should come over to our faith. Therefore they often sent to us, and asked us to discourse to them concerning Yeshua, whether he were the prophet whom Moses foretold, who is the eternal Christ. John 12:34. For on this point only does there seem to be any difference between us who believe in Yeshua and the unbelieving Jews. But while they often made such requests to us, and we sought for a fitting opportunity, a week of years was completed from the passion of the Lord. The church of the Lord, which was constituted in Jerusalem, was most plentifully multiplied and grew, being governed with most righteous ordinances by James, who was ordained bishop in it by the Lord. But when we 12 apostles, on the day of the Passover, had come together with an immense multitude, and entered into the church of the brethren. Each one of us, at the request of James, stated briefly, in the hearing of the people, what we had done in every place. While this was going on, Caiaphas the high priest sent priests to us and asked us to come to him, that either we should prove to him that Yeshua is the eternal Messiah, or he to us that he is not, and that so all the people should agree upon the one faith or the other. And this he frequently entreated us to do. But we often put it off, always seeking for a more convenient time. Then I, Clement, answered to this. I think that this very question, whether he is the Christ, is of great importance for the establishment of the faith. Otherwise the high priest would not so frequently ask that he might either learn or teach concerning the Christ. Then Peter, you have answered rightly, O Clement, for as no one can see without eyes, nor hear without ears, nor smell without nostrils, nor taste without a tongue, nor handle anything without hands, so it is impossible without the true prophet to know what is pleasing to Jehovah. And I answered, I have already learned from your instruction that this true prophet is the Christ, but I should wish to learn what the Christ means, or why he is so called, that a matter of so great importance may not be vague and uncertain to me. Then Peter began to instruct me in this manner. When Jehovah had made the world as Lord of the universe, he appointed chiefs over the several creatures, over the trees even, and the mountains, and the fountains, and the rivers, and all things which he had made, as we have told you, for it were too long to mention them one by one. He set, therefore, an angel as chief over the angels, a spirit over the spirits, a star over the stars, a demon over the demons, a bird over the birds, a beast over the beasts, a serpent over the serpents, a fish over the fishes, a man over men, who is Yeshua Messiah. But he is called Christ by a certain excellent right of religion. For as there are certain names common to kings, as are Saces among the Persians, Caesar among the Romans, Pharaoh among the Egyptians, so among the Jews a king is called Christ. And the reason of this appellation is this: although indeed he was the Son of Jehovah and the beginning of all things, he became man. Him first Jehovah anointed with oil which was taken from the wood of the tree of life. From that anointing therefore he is called Christ. Thence moreover he himself also, according to the appointment of his Father, anoints with similar oil every one of the pious when they come to his kingdom, for their refreshment after their labors, as having got over the difficulties of the way, so that their light may shine, and being filled with the Holy Spirit, they may be endowed with immortality. But it occurs to me that I have sufficiently explained to you the whole nature of that branch from which that ointment is taken. But now also I shall by a very short representation recall you to the recollection of all these things. In the present life, Aaron, the first high priest, was anointed with a composition of chrism, which was made after the pattern of that spiritual ointment of which we have spoken before. He was prince of the people, and as a king received first fruits and tribute from the people, man by man. And having undertaken the office of judging the people, he judged of things clean and things unclean. But if anyone else was anointed with the same ointment, as deriving virtue from it, he became either king, or prophet, or priest. If then, this temporal grace, compounded by men, had such efficacy, consider now how potent was that ointment extracted by Jehovah from a branch of the tree of life, when that which was made by men could confer so excellent dignities among men. For what in the present age is more glorious than a prophet, more illustrious than a priest, more exalted than a king? To this I replied, I remember, Peter, that you told me of the first man that he was a prophet, but you did not say that he was anointed. If then there be no prophet without anointing, how could the first man be a prophet, since he was not anointed? Then Peter, smiling, said, If the first man prophesied, it is certain that he was also anointed. For although he who has recorded the law in his pages is silent as to his anointing, yet he has evidently left us to understand these things. For as if he had said that he was anointed, it would not be doubted that he was also a prophet, although it were not written in the law. So since it is certain that he was a prophet, It is in like manner certain that he was also anointed, because without anointing he could not be a prophet. But you should rather have said, if the chrism was compounded by Aaron by the perfumer's art, how could the first man be anointed before Aaron's time, the arts of composition not yet having been discovered? Then I answered, do not misunderstand me, Peter, for I do not speak of that compounded ointment and temporal oil, but of that simple and eternal ointment, which you told me was made by Jehovah, after whose likeness you say that that other was compounded by men. Then Peter answered, with an appearance of indignation, what? Do you suppose, Clement, that all of us can know all things before the time? But not to be drawn aside now from our proposed discourse, we shall at another time, when your progress is more manifest, explain these things more distinctly. Then, however, a priest or a prophet, being anointed with the compounded ointment, putting fire to the altar of Jehovah, was held illustrious in all the world. But after Aaron, who was a priest, another is taken out of the waters. I do not speak of Moses, but of him who, in the waters of baptism, was called by Jehovah his son. Matthew 3:17. For it is Yeshua who has put out, by the grace of baptism, that fire which the priest kindled for sins. For from the time when he appeared, the chrism has ceased, by which the priesthood or the prophetic or the kingly office was conferred. His coming therefore was predicted by Moses, who delivered the law of Jehovah to men, but by another also before him, as I have already informed you. He therefore intimated that he should come, humble indeed in his first coming, but glorious in his second. And the first indeed has been already accomplished, since he has come and taught, and he, the judge of all, has been judged and slain. But at his second coming he shall come to judge, and shall indeed condemn the wicked, but shall take the pious into a share and association with himself in his kingdom. Now the faith of his second coming depends upon his first. For the prophets, especially Jacob and Moses, spoke of the first, but some also of the second. But the excellency of prophecy is chiefly shown in this, that the prophets spoke not of things to come, according to the sequence of things. Otherwise they might seem merely as wise men to have conjectured what the sequence of things pointed out. But what I say is this: it was to be expected that Christ should be received by the Jews, to whom he came, and that they should believe in him who was expected for the salvation of the people, according to the traditions of the fathers, but that the Gentiles should be averse to him, since neither promise nor announcement concerning him had been made to them, and indeed he had never been made known to them even by name. Yet the prophets, contrary to the order and sequence of things, said that he should be the expectation of the Gentiles, and not of the Jews. Genesis 49:10. And so it happened. For when he came, he was not at all acknowledged by those who seemed to expect him, in consequence of the tradition of their ancestors, whereas those who had heard nothing at all of him, both believe that he has come, and hope that he is to come. And thus in all things prophecy appears faithful, which said that he was the expectation of the Gentiles. The Jews therefore have erred concerning the first coming of the Lord, and on this point only there is disagreement between us and them. For they themselves know and expect that Christ shall come, but that he has come already in humility, even he who is called Yeshua, they do not know. And this is a great confirmation of his coming, that all do not believe in him.